The first thing I felt was David's warm breath on my neck as I woke up in my old childhood bed. The second thing was my mother standing in the doorway with a calm, knowing look that made my blood run cold. My heart slammed against my ribs while memories from last night flooded back in blurry waves. We had come home to my parents' suburban house outside Denver for the weekend like we always did. Too much beer at the neighborhood barbecue turned into deep talks in the basement rec room. I told David everything I had buried for years about how I felt about him since high school. He listened without pulling away, and then we kissed softly under the dim lamplight. It was tender and real, not the wild mistake people might imagine in those situations. Now in the morning light, I waited for the panic to hit him or for my mom to scream. Instead, she just nodded once and closed the door quietly behind her without a word. David stirred beside me, his eyes opening slowly as confusion spread across his face. He sat up fast, pulling the blanket around himself like it could shield us from reality. "Leo, what the hell happened last night?" he asked, his voice cracking with uncertainty. I swallowed hard, trying to find words that would not destroy our 10-year friendship. "We were drunk," I said, "but it was more than that, for me at least." David ran a hand through his messy blonde hair, staring at the floor in silence. "I have known you forever," he finally replied, "but this changes everything, does not it?" The tension in the room grew thick as we dressed and avoided each other's eyes. Downstairs, the smell of coffee and bacon filled the kitchen like any normal Saturday. My dad was already at the table reading the newspaper while Mom flipped pancakes. She glanced at us both with that same serene expression from earlier in the doorway. "Good morning, boys," she said, her tone warm and completely normal, as if nothing happened. Dad grunted a greeting without looking up, completely unaware of the storm inside me. I sat down, forcing a smile, while David took the seat across from me awkwardly. Breakfast passed in small talk about the weather and college classes we were taking. Every time Mom looked my way, I wondered if she suspected something deeper than a hangover. She had always been the quiet, observant type, never pushing but always there. After the meal, David suggested we go for a walk to clear our heads together. The neighborhood streets were lined with maple trees just starting to turn gold in fall. We walked in silence, at first the crunch of leaves under our sneakers the only sound. "Leo, about last night," David started. "I do not want to lose what we have." "Me neither," I answered quickly, "but the kiss meant something to me and I cannot pretend." He stopped walking and turned to face me, his blue eyes full of mixed emotions. "I need time to figure this out," he said. "It is a lot to process right now." I nodded, understanding the fear in his voice because I had lived with it for years. Back at the house, Mom was in the garden tending her flowers with quiet focus. She looked up and smiled at us both, inviting us to help with the weeding. David jumped at the chance to do something normal while I watched her carefully. There was no judgment in her eyes, only a gentle patience that felt almost too knowing. Later that afternoon, while David napped in the guest room, I found Mom alone in the kitchen. I wanted to confess everything, but the words stuck in my throat like glue. She poured me a glass of iced tea and sat across from me at the counter. "You know you can talk to me about anything, Leo," she said softly without pressure. I almost broke then, but instead I just thanked her and changed the subject fast. The day stretched on with family activities that masked the growing tension between David and me. By evening, the air felt heavier, as if the secret was pressing down on all of us. Dad noticed we were quieter than usual and made a joke about young love troubles. If only he knew how close that joke landed, I thought, while forcing a laugh. Mom shot me a quick look that seemed to say she understood more than I realized. That night, as I lay in bed alone, the weight of the confession settled deeper inside. David had chosen the guest room, claiming he needed space to think things through. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our friendship from basketball games in high school. We had been inseparable through college parties and late-night study sessions together. My feelings for him had grown slowly from admiration to something much stronger over time. Last night's kiss had been the breaking point after years of holding it all in. I wondered if our friendship could survive this or if I had ruined it forever. Morning came too soon, with sunlight streaming through the curtains once again. Downstairs, Mom was already preparing breakfast, humming softly to herself in the kitchen. David joined us, looking tired but calmer than the day before, which gave me hope. We ate quietly while Dad talked about the football game on TV later that day. After breakfast, David pulled me aside in the backyard under the old oak tree. "I have been thinking a lot, Leo," he said, "and I care about you too much to lie. But I am not sure what I feel yet," he continued. "We need to take this slow." Relief washed over me, mixed with the pain of uncertainty about where we stood now. Mom watched us from the kitchen window, her expression still that quiet, understanding one. She had not said a word about what she saw, but her presence felt supportive somehow. The weekend continued with more family time that forced David and me to act normal. We played cards with my parents and laughed at old stories from our childhood. Yet underneath it all, the secret simmered, waiting for the right moment to surface. By Sunday afternoon, the strain was starting to show in small, awkward silences between us. Dad commented on it again, asking if we had a fight over some girl or something. I brushed it off, but inside I felt the walls closing in on my hidden truth. Mom stayed silent through it all, her eyes following me with that familiar, gentle care. Little did I know she had been carrying her own knowledge for a very long time. The drive back to our shared apartment in the city felt longer than usual that Sunday evening. David stared out the window most of the way while I gripped the steering wheel tightly. We barely spoke about what happened except to agree that we needed some space to process. Back home, the familiar space felt different now, loaded with the memory of that kiss. I threw myself into schoolwork, trying to distract from the constant thoughts of David. He spent more time at the gym and with other friends, which only heightened my anxiety. Days turned into a week of careful conversations and avoided eye contact around the apartment. One evening, I found an old photo album from high school while cleaning my room. There we were, smiling in our basketball jerseys, arms around each other like brothers. The image brought back all the hidden longing I had felt even then as a teenager. I wondered if anyone else had noticed the way I looked at him in those pictures. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom asking how we were doing after the weekend. I replied that everything was fine, but she sent back a simple heart emoji in response. It felt like she was reaching out without words, as if she sensed the turmoil inside me. The following weekend, we were invited back to my parents' house for a family barbecue. Dad was excited about grilling burgers and invited some neighbors over for the afternoon. David agreed to come along, though the tension between us had not fully eased yet. As we arrived, Mom hugged us both tightly, her embrace lingering a second longer on me. She whispered in my ear that she loved me no matter what, which caught me off guard. The party went smoothly at first, with laughter and games in the backyard under clear skies. Dad manned the grill, telling his usual jokes, while neighbors chatted about local news. I helped Mom set up the tables, trying to keep my mind off the situation with David. He was playing cornhole with some guys from the block, looking relaxed for the first time. Later, as the sun began to set, the conversation turned more personal around the fire pit. Dad started asking about our futures and if either of us had serious girlfriends yet. The question hung heavy in the air, making me shift uncomfortably in my chair. David glanced at me quickly, then laughed it off, saying we were too busy with classes. But Dad pressed on, joking that two good-looking guys like us must have girls lining up. The comment was light, but it stirred the secret deeper inside me until I could not ignore it. Mom sat quietly beside Dad, her hand resting on his arm in a calming way. I could feel her eyes on me again, that same knowing look from the bedroom doorway. After the guests left, the four of us sat in the living room with coffee and dessert. Dad turned on the TV but kept the volume low enough for conversation to flow. He mentioned how proud he was of us boys for sticking together through thick and thin. Then he added that real men need to be careful about certain close friendships these days. The words landed like a punch, though he meant them innocently from his traditional viewpoint. David stiffened beside me on the couch, his face flushing with sudden discomfort. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks as the implication of his comment sank in fully. Mom remained composed, but I saw her jaw tighten slightly in a subtle protective way. The room grew quiet except for the low hum of the television in the background. Dad continued, unaware, saying he hoped we were not getting any funny ideas about life. That was the moment the secret felt too big to contain any longer in my chest. I stood up, abruptly excusing myself to the bathroom to catch my breath alone. David followed me into the hallway, his voice low as he asked if I was okay. I told him no, not really, because hiding this was tearing me apart inside now. He placed a hand on my shoulder, but the touch felt different after everything that happened. Back in the living room, Dad was still talking when we returned, trying to lighten the mood. But the air had shifted, and everyone could sense the unspoken elephant in the room. Mom finally spoke up softly, suggesting we all take a breath and enjoy the evening. Her voice was steady and warm, cutting through the growing tension like a gentle anchor. David and I sat back down, but the damage from Dad's words lingered heavily between us. Later that night in my old room, I confided in David about how scared I felt. He admitted that the kiss had confused him deeply, but he did not want to lose me. We talked for hours about our friendship and what the future might hold for us now. Mom knocked gently on the door, bringing in snacks and water with a caring smile. She did not ask questions, just left the tray and squeezed my hand before leaving. Her silence through all of this felt both comforting and mysterious at the same time. The next morning brought more family time, but the undercurrent of drama was building fast. Dad made another casual remark at breakfast about guys needing to act like guys. This time David reacted, visibly pulling away from the table with an excuse about packing. I followed him upstairs, where he expressed frustration about feeling pressured and exposed. The climax of the weekend hit when Dad confronted us directly in the driveway before we left. He had overheard part of our late-night talk and put two and two together quickly. "Are you two involved in something unnatural?" he asked, his voice rising with traditional shock. David panicked and denied it sharply, saying it was just a drunken mistake, nothing more. His words cut through me like betrayal, making me feel utterly alone in that moment. Mom stepped forward, then her eyes flashing with a strength I had never seen before. "That is enough," she said, firmly placing herself between Dad and us in the driveway. "I have known about Leo for years," she continued, her voice steady but full of conviction. "He is my son, and I love him exactly as he is," she added without hesitation. Dad stood there stunned, his mouth opening and closing without immediate words coming out. Mom revealed that she had found my old journal when I was 15 and read the entries. They were full of feelings for David and questions about my own identity back then. She chose to stay silent, waiting for me to come to her when I was ready. All this time she had watched me struggle and supported me in quiet ways every day. David looked at her in surprise, realizing the depth of her knowledge about everything. She turned to him gently, saying she had seen the way we looked at each other too. "I never pushed, because love like this needs to grow naturally without outside force." Dad tried to interrupt, but Mom held up her hand with quiet authority in her stance. "This is not about what you think is normal," she told him. "This is about our family. Leo has been carrying this alone for too long, and I will not let him suffer more." Her words washed over me like a wave of relief mixed with overwhelming emotion. I had no idea she carried this secret alongside mine all those silent years. David stood frozen, processing the revelation that Mom had been protecting us subtly. She hugged me tightly right there in front of everyone, her arms strong and unwavering. Dad sat down on the porch steps, his face a mix of confusion and reluctant acceptance. The confrontation had exploded into the open, but Mom's defense changed the entire dynamic. We talked for hours after that on the porch as the sun dipped lower in the sky. Mom shared stories of how she subtly guided conversations and created safe spaces for me. She had even spoken privately with David's mother once about the close bond we shared. David listened intently, his eyes softening as he absorbed the layers of hidden support. I felt seen and valued in a way that lifted the heavy weight from my shoulders. The twist came when Mom admitted she suspected David might feel the same way too. She had noticed small signs over the years, like how he always chose to be near me. It was not manipulation, she explained, just a mother's hope for her son's happiness. Dad remained mostly quiet, but he did not argue further, which was progress in itself. By the time evening arrived, the family felt more united despite the initial shock. David and I took a walk around the block, processing everything that had unfolded. He apologized for his panicked denial earlier, saying fear had made him react badly. I forgave him quickly because the moment had been overwhelming for both of us. Mom's stand had opened the door to honest conversations we needed to have long ago. Back inside, she prepared a simple dinner with all our favorite foods from childhood. The table felt warmer now, with laughter returning slowly to fill the earlier silence. Dad even cracked a tentative joke about learning new things at his age, which broke the ice. Mom smiled at me across the table, her eyes full of pride and unconditional love. That night, as David and I packed to leave, she pulled me aside in the hallway. "I am always here for you, Leo," she whispered, "no matter what path you choose ahead." Her long silence had been an act of respect, not indifference, I realized now. It allowed me to own my truth on my own terms, which meant everything to me. The drive home was different this time, filled with open talks about our feelings. David admitted the kiss had awakened something in him that he wanted to explore slowly. We agreed to take things one day at a time without rushing into labels or pressure. The friendship that survived the storm now had the chance to grow into something deeper. Mom texted me later that night, just a simple message saying she loved us both. It was her way of continuing the quiet support that had always been there underneath. The following weeks brought more healing as we navigated school and life with new honesty. David and I shared more vulnerable moments, rebuilding trust after the initial betrayal feelings. Mom called regularly, checking in without prying, just offering her steady presence from afar. Dad even reached out once with an awkward but sincere attempt to understand better. The family dynamics shifted gradually toward acceptance, shaped by Mom's courageous stand. I reflected often on how her silence had been a form of profound love all along. It taught me patience and the value of letting people find their own timing in life. David and I started going on casual dates like walks in the park or coffee runs. These moments felt natural and right, building on the foundation of our long friendship. The emotional weight that once threatened to crush us now lifted into hopeful possibility. Mom's protection had not only saved the immediate crisis but paved the way for healing. Months passed and the initial drama faded into a new normal for all of us. David and I grew closer through honest conversations and shared experiences in the city. We attended a few family gatherings where Mom continued to champion our bond openly. Dad had come around in his own time, asking questions and listening more attentively now. The twist of her quiet guidance revealed how deeply she had invested in my happiness. She had planted small seeds of acceptance over the years without me even noticing. One evening, we all gathered at the suburban house for a holiday dinner together. The table was filled with laughter and stories that bridged the gaps from before. Mom raised a glass to family in all its forms, her eyes shining with quiet joy. David squeezed my hand under the table, a small gesture full of meaning between us. I felt truly free for the first time, sharing my authentic self without fear of rejection. The healing extended beyond just us to strengthen the entire family unit as well. Mom and I had long talks about her decision to stay silent during my teenage years. She explained it came from trusting my strength and respecting my personal journey fully. It was not easy for her, she admitted, but she believed in the power of unconditional love. David shared how her words in the driveway helped him confront his own buried feelings. He realized he had been attracted to me for longer than he allowed himself to admit. Their quiet alliance had created space for us to find each other naturally in time. The pain of the exposure and near betrayal transformed into gratitude for the outcome. Life in the apartment became a blend of friendship and budding romance filled with warmth. We cooked meals together, studied late into the night, and supported each other's dreams. Mom visited the city, occasionally bringing homemade treats and words of encouragement always. Her presence remained a steady anchor, reminding us that we were never truly alone. Dad joined a support group for parents, learning more about LGBTQ experiences with humility. The change in him showed how one strong voice could ripple outward in positive ways. I often thought back to that shocking morning in my childhood bed with David beside me. What started as panic evolved into the most authentic chapter of my life so far. The story of our bond proved that secrets held in love could lead to beautiful truths. Through it all, the human connections deepened, making every struggle worthwhile in the end. We celebrated small milestones like our first official date and family acceptance moments. Mom watched with pride, never taking credit but always being the quiet hero behind it. Her journey from silence to vocal protection inspired me to live more openly myself. David and I talked about the future with excitement, planning adventures and shared goals. The flexibility in our pacing allowed room for growth without losing what mattered most. Emotional depth replaced the earlier tension, creating a relationship built on trust and respect. The neighborhood and friends gradually learned about us through natural conversations over time. Support came from unexpected places, reinforcing that humanity thrives on understanding and kindness. Looking back, the entire experience highlighted the power of family love in its truest form. Mom's choice to wait then stand up had protected not just me but all of us. It taught valuable lessons about timing, patience, and the courage to defend what is right. David often said he was grateful for her intervention, which opened his heart fully. Our story became one of resilience, healing, and the quiet strength found in everyday heroes. As winter approached, we planned a trip together to visit new places and create memories. Mom sent us off with hugs and her signature knowing smile full of quiet confidence. The open road ahead felt bright with possibilities shaped by the lessons we all learned. Life continued its natural flow with ups and downs, but always grounded in love now. I cherished the way our family had grown closer through honesty and mutual respect. The initial shock of that drunken night had ultimately led to profound personal freedom. Through every step, the emotional authenticity guided us toward a brighter shared future. Mom remained the heart of it, all her silent years now understood as profound care. David and I built a life together, step by step, honoring our unique journey always. The experience left me more compassionate toward others facing similar hidden struggles daily. In the end, love in all its forms proved stronger than any secret or fear combined. Was my mother's long silence the right way to show love, or should she have spoken sooner?